This is Mrs. Miller, your teacher at ELA Academy. Welcome to the latest installment of the Grammar Series. Today we'll talk about phrases. A phrase is a group of related words that does not include both a subject and a verb. That's a clause, which we'll talk about in the next video. We've already talked about a couple types of phrases, so we'll have a little review before we look at new stuff. You might remember this slide from the prepositions video. We have prepositional phrases that describe where our astronaut is. On the ship, in front of the ship, behind the ship, under the ship, and in the ship. The words in yellow are prepositions and the words in blue are their objects. Everything from the preposition to its object is part of the prepositional phrase, the entire group of words that goes with the preposition. Notice that we have nouns in these phrases but no verbs. The next kind of phrase is the verb phrase. We hinted at this in the verbs video. The verb phrase is the main verb plus any helping verbs. Let's look at some examples. Camille studied for the test. Studied is the verb. Since it doesn't have any helping verbs, it isn't a verb phrase. Remember, a phrase is a group of related words. This is just a verb. But Camille is studying for the test. Studying is the main verb, but we also have the helping verb is to help show that she's continuously studying in the present. Is studying is a verb phrase. Camille has been studying for the test. There's a main verb and two helping verbs. And Camille will have been studying for 10 hours by the time she finishes. There's a nice big verb phrase for you. Main verb plus 3 helping verbs. So those are verb phrases. Next is the noun phrase. The noun phrase is the noun plus all the modifiers that go with it. Let's look at the first example. This is an excerpt from Great Expectations that you've seen before if you've been following this series. What I've done here is to color each noun or pronoun a dark blue and all of its modifiers a light blue. The first is I. Notice that there are no modifiers, so it isn't a phrase, just a pronoun. But the next noun is dog. Which dog is it? A large dog of ours. That whole phrase describes the dog, so it's a noun phrase. Same with food. Which food? His food. What about way? What way is it? The dog's way of eating. The next one is interesting. Notice that I colored the man's in light blue. Why did I do that? Even though man is a noun, when we put the apostrophe S on it, we made it possessive, which makes it an adjective. So where is the noun? Well, it's left unspoken. There are 2 ways of eating here, the dog's way of eating and the man's way of eating. It's just more elegant to avoid repeating all the words. The next example might blow your mind a little. Remember this one? This is a description of the convict when Pip first meets him. Notice that every single word is in blue. That can't be right. There has to be at least one verb in there somewhere. Famous authors always use complete sentences, right? Well, no, they don't. You can find artful fragments all throughout published literature. We do have some verbs in this excerpt, but they're all tied up in relative clauses. That's something we addressed in the conjunctions video, and you'll learn more when we talk about clauses. A relative clause acts like a really long adjective describing a noun. And guess what? An adjective is a modifier, which makes it part of a noun phrase. This whole thing is nothing but 3 big noun phrases. Which man is it? A fearful man, all in coarse gray with a great iron on his leg. No verb there at all. A man with no hat and with broken shoes and with an old rag tied around his head. Oh, there's a verb, tied, but it only helps to describe the rag. We can test it if you aren't sure, though. What would be the subject of this verb? What did the tying? Did the rag tie itself? No, a person would tie the rag, but the sentence doesn't say that. Some words are left out. Let's try putting the omitted words back into the sentence. And with an old rag that was tied around his head. There we go. The word that is a relative pronoun, which makes the rest of that sentence a relative clause. So that makes it part of the noun phrase. Now let's look at appositives. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that renames another noun. Let's look at an example. James Bond, a spy, is one of the most well-known movie characters of all time. The main noun here is James Bond. Who is he? A spy. If we had a picture of James Bond, we could point to the guy and call him either one of these, and it would still mean the same guy. James Bond equals spy. We've renamed him, so this is an appositive. Let's add some more details. James Bond, a clever and dashing spy, is one of the most well-known movie characters of all time. Is this still an appositive? We still have the word spy, which renames James Bond, so that's good. What about the rest of the words? We added clever and dashing, which are adjectives. Since they are modifiers that describe the spy, that makes it a noun phrase. Noun phrases can be appositives, so we're good. James Bond, a spy with a gun, is one of the blah, blah, blah. What words did we add here? A prepositional phrase. The prepositional phrase tells us which spy we're talking about. He's a spy with a gun, as opposed to the spy with a knife or some other weapon. Though really this is James Bond we're talking about, so he probably has 16 different weapons, including ones cleverly hidden in a watch, a shoe, and a pack of chewing gum. Anyways, it describes the spy, so we still have a noun phrase, another appositive. James Bond, a spy who kills villains to protect the British people. This is a relative clause. Remember, those act like adjectives. It describes the spy, so we still have a noun phrase and an appositive. All of these appositives have included the word spy, which renames the noun James Bond. But what if we remove the word spy? James Bond, who kills villains to protect the British people. Now we have the relative clause, but it isn't modifying spy anymore. What is it modifying? James Bond. Since we don't have an actual noun renaming James Bond, we no longer have an appositive. We only have a relative clause. Now, all of the appositives we looked at were set off by commas, but that won't always be the case. If the appositive is absolutely necessary in the sentence, it's restrictive, so there won't be any commas. If it's just extra information, non-essential, then you use commas. Think of the commas like handles you could use to lift the appositive right out of the sentence if you wanted to. Let's look at a couple of examples. My sister Jennifer is having a baby. Jennifer is an appositive that renames sister. We have no commas, which means that Jennifer is absolutely necessary to the sentence. Why would that be the case? Maybe I have several sisters, so if I don't include Jennifer, you won't know which sister I'm talking about. But let's say I only have one sister. Then the information about her name is nice, but not absolutely necessary. Let's say I decide my audience already knows Jennifer, so I don't need to include her name in this sentence. I could grab these commas like handles and lift that appositive right out of the sentence. It's a removable appositive. Quick review. Remember, a phrase is a group of related words that doesn't include both a subject and a verb. We looked at 4 kinds of phrases: prepositional phrases, verb phrases, noun phrases, and appositives. It's helpful to be able to recognize these phrases if for no other reason than to be able to make your subjects and verbs agree when you write. Subject-verb agreement is a common writing error, not just among English language learners, but also among native speakers. But that's a topic for another video. That's it for phrases. I hope this video has been helpful. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on social media so that you can be notified when I post new content. And if you like what I'm doing here, please consider supporting ELA Academy on Patreon. This is ELA Academy.